Hello and welcome. It is so good to have you with me today. Welcome to this mini class where we are going to talk a little bit about fiber structure in the eyes and some of what it could mean. Of course, in a mini class, we don't have time to go super deep, but we can kind of give you that high level overview. I'm also going to encourage you, if you're going to watch this on replay, the link will be sent out tomorrow for those of you who are watching live. And if you're watching it on replay, drop a comment, like the video, share it. Just those things help to make the videos more visible to more people. And I really appreciate your help with that. I would love it if you would take just a moment to drop a comment in the chat box and let me know where you're from. It's just fun to see how far reaching our audience is sometimes. And I would also love to see a comment in the chat box about what your background in iridology is. Have you had training? Are you new? That will help me to understand how deep I should go or can go or shouldn't go in our little class today. So if you would take a moment, and I will bet I forgot to set up the chat box so that nobody can chat. Just let me get in here. There we go. Fixed it. There you go. So now you should be able to chat. All right. And again, just let me know where you're from and let me know what your background is so that we can decide how deep we are going to go in our work today. And thank you so much. You'll also find the more you play with me in the chat box, the more you'll get out of me. If I feel like everybody is sleeping, I'm going to keep this super surface, right? Because if you're sleeping, I'm not going to, there's no sense of going too deep. So we've got lots of people from Quebec. That's kind of fun. We've got a couple of people from Quebec. We've got Montana. We've got Vancouver Island. We've got some students. We've got some other people I know. I've got a lot of iridology background, and some of you who are new to this, welcome. So good to have you with us today. I'm also going to encourage you to stay right to the very end because we're going to be talking about eyes pretty much the very last slide, eyes and learning iridology. So you'll want to be with us right till the end. Just as we're starting out, wanted to share this, that one of my graduates said a little while ago, this is a few years ago that she posted this. I asked her how she felt iridology was helping her. She's a CNHP and she specializes in gut health. She said this: "It's been a great asset to me in my office specializing in digestive health. Iridology underscores the answers that I get from digestive testing and takes things to another dimension and a deeper level. Plus, people who've never heard of iridology are very curious about their genetic predispositions." So I really appreciate that she shared that with me, that that's the benefit she's seeing by using iridology in her holistic practice with her clients. So when we are talking about fiber structure, we need to know a little teeny bit about the structure of the iris. So I want you to imagine that what we've done is we've taken the iris, which is a donut shape, and we've laid it flat and we've cut it so that we can kind of raise one of those cut edges and look at the cut end. Okay, so as we're looking at that cut surface, the pupil would be over here. This is the side that is up or facing out to the world if the person was actually standing up instead of laying down. This is the side of the iris that faces back into the posterior chamber of the eye. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. Now, in all honesty, just showing my human side, I'd been looking at diagrams like this for about 30 years before I figured out what they were all about. It's like, I'm a certified iridologist, and I don't know, it just wasn't working for me. So hopefully that works for you. So what we're going to be looking at is what makes up this part of the eye. So between the anterior border layer, which is the frontmost facing layer, and that posterior epithelium, we've got lots of muscles and nerves and blood vessels, but we also have this, what we call a trabecular mesh or trabeculae. And so when we are looking at this, this is pretty much the top layer of this is what we are going to be looking at, not the anterior border layer, but the top layer of fiber that is just behind the anterior border layer. In the dynamic iridology assessment system program, we teach 7 different variations on the topic of fiber. Today, we're going to just really keep it high level because we certainly don't have time to go into all of the depth that I do in the dynamic iridology program. So let's look at these eyes. This is a really good example of well-organized fiber structure. As a general rule, look at how these fibers radiate outwards, almost like they were combed. Now, these are actually not fibers at all. It's not like a thread kind of a fiber. It's not like a filament. These are capillaries that are coated with collagen. Capillaries that are coated with collagen. And so, and as such, they have an arterial flow and they have a venous flow. We're not going to go into all of that deep detail today. But I want you to notice that in spite of the fact that most of these fibers radiate outwards, when we look carefully, we see that there are some fibers that cut across other fibers. There are some fibers that do kind of wonky different things here. Like here we've got another fiber that's crossing over. Each of these fibers gives us information, specific types of questions we want to ask, things we want to watch for. And so as we're looking at this, and we're looking at these fibers, probably the most, just want to make sure I say this correctly so that it makes sense and so that I'm not spreading false teachings about iridology. Let me back that up a little bit. The fiber structure is inherent. It's what has come down through the parents, the grandparents, and the great-grandparents. So we are not going to cleanse, fast, supplement this person to where this fiber is, this trabecula is actually going to straighten out and mind its manners. It is always going to be going a little bit askew in this person's eye. When we have our iridology map and we see where this is, we then know that we are going to, what kinds of questions we need to ask, what kinds of symptoms we need to watch out for. This is not a doomsday prophecy here saying, oh my goodness, you're doomed, you're so doomed, you're gonna have this problem. Oh no, I wish I could save you. Nothing like that. All right. This is an inherent suggestion, it's an inherent indication that something wants to be out of balance. But when we understand what the organ is and the symptoms that we want to watch for and the questions we want to ask, then we understand whether it's something we actually need to be concerned about or not, right? That's what we need to remember about everything in iridology, is that everything we see is a suggestion of a risk. And whether that person actually manifests that risk is entirely dependent on their nutritional status, what kind of care they're taking of their body, their emotional and spiritual status. Those things will all increase or decrease a particular inherent risk. Does that make sense? I like what Chan is saying in the comments. Just like we cannot change our fingerprints from taking supplements or cleansing, we can be given great genetics or not so great genetics. Up to us what we do with that. Absolutely, Chana. I love that clarity. Thank you for posting that. So here we have a woman who was in her late 50s when we met. And so again, as we're looking at her eyes, similar to what we looked at before, not quite as neatly organized, we'll see that there are lots of little fibers, little trabeculae, I should use the proper word here, that are skittering off across other fibers, other trabeculae. And so when we see that again, this teaches us about the inherited predispositions. And so this is where we need to be asking questions. And I'm not going to ask a question about every single one of these markings. We'd be here forever. And the client is soon going to feel overwhelmed and maybe even a little depressed, thinking they're a basket case, they're falling apart. Oh my goodness. So instead, I'm always going to ask my client first, what would you like my help with? And then in the context of what she wants help with, I will then weigh and measure the markings I see What information do they give me about what she's concerned with? So this is really important that as we ask that, we also ask another question, and that is there a personal or family history of anything? So I want to know, what are my clients' main concerns? But I also want to know if there is something, quote unquote, running in the family, right? I want to know what those predispositions are. Now, I personally believe that much of what we see as inherited problems, oh, my mother had this, my grandmother had the same thing, my great grandmother had the same thing. I think it's mostly the cookbook or the recipe book that's inherited. If we eat the way our parents did, it's likely we're going to have many of the same problems our parents had. And so a lot of what I want to find out is what symptoms did we see in the family going back? How does that relate to my client's concerns? And how does it relate to what I see in the eyes? When we see these transversals, as we call them, these are trabeculae that are crossing over other fibers, we know that we have an increased risk or predisposition towards inflammation, scar tissue, blockages. So we've got to have a conversation with the client, right? We aren't looking at this and saying, you have a blockage here, you have scar tissue here, you have inflammation here, because we don't know that. Again, maybe this client is doing a lot of things really right. And in doing all of those things that are really right, they are mitigating some of the problems that these inherent tendencies would like to create for them. Does that make sense? That the eyes don't give us a guarantee of anything, but they show us where the predispositions are? If that makes sense, Chana says yes. If that makes sense, I want to see some other people playing with me in the chat box here. Let me know, does that make sense? Liz says yes as well. Thank you for that. And Kara says makes sense as well. Brilliant. I love this. Wonderful. Thank you so much for these comments, and keep them coming in. There are many different types of transversals. Like I said, in the dynamic iridology program, we teach 7 different types, and they each mean something slightly different. And so we're not going to go into everything. One of the things that we do see fairly commonly, though, is with transversals, it often does give us that suggestion that this person is predisposed to inflammatory situations. Now, inflammatory can mean a lot of different things, right? It can mean prone to sore throats. That's an inflammation. It can mean arthritis. It can mean asthma. It can mean a bursitis. Those are all inflammations. It could mean eczema, right? Those are all inflammatory processes, sinusitis, right? And so seeing this only suggests an increased risk of, and that's where we need to have the conversation with the client. This is the eye of a 4-year-old child. And again, the fiber structure is inherited. So as we look at her eyes, notice that she's got some transversals. She's got trabeculae that are going off across other fibers. Now, this little girl is very blessed in that her parents are very holistic. They food is from scratch, it's organic, it's healthy. There's almost no junk food in the diet, and if there is, it's usually a healthier version of a junk food. So she's not being raised on sugar sweetened cereals and pink fluid in a bottle kind of thing, right? She's being raised on real food and in a loving environment that is very supportive, and just she gets herbs and vitamins as she needs them, and very good extended family. She's actually a 3rd generation client for me. And so when I see these things in her eyes, I don't panic. She's been well. She doesn't get recurring colds. She hasn't had recurring ear infections or recurring tonsil issues or recurring throat issues or recurring gut issues, nothing like that. She's been very, very well. And so when I see this in her eyes, knowing her mother's history, I don't think I've worked with her dad, but then also knowing the maternal grandmother's history and many of the aunts, uncles, cousins, it's really, I've got quite a few members of this family as clients. I know then that I just simply need to underscore for the mother, reinforce what a good job she's doing and how she's really, the diet things that she's doing with this child are so good, so very good. And the way they're loving this child and raising this child and supporting this child and training this child, so good. So when I see a child's eye with these trabeculae, I'm not going to panic. I'm simply going to assess what is the diet, what is the lifestyle, what is the family situation? Is it supportive of regulating and controlling some of the things that these trabeculae could represent? Or is what they're doing destructive? If it's destructive, we'll have that conversation about, let's start with some dietary changes. This child needs a little more positive reinforcement, a little more love, a little more gentleness, a little more whatever, right? And we're going to work in that. So, so it's just so important that we not jump to conclusions when we are doing an iris assessment, but when we see these trabeculae, these transversals, that these trabeculae that are transversals, that we not go, oh my goodness, this child is doomed. She's going to have arthritis by the time she's 12 and blah, blah, blah. Don't go there. Don't go there. Not a good thing to do. Here's another one of my clients. She's a second generation client of mine. Again, take a moment and do a scan around these eyes, this eye rather, and tell me where you see fibers that are crossing over other fibers. So if this is a clock that has 60 minutes on it, what I want to see is in the comments is the minutes of where you see fibers that are crossing over others. And while you're doing that, Chana says, when looking at several generations of irides, if transversals are passed on, are they typically in the same location? They are often in a similar location. Sometimes they're exactly the same. Sometimes what we've got here is a predisposition towards transversals, and we may see them in different locations because, of course, we have the influence of two parents deciding where these transversals are going to go. So sometimes they're where one parent had them, sometimes they're where the other parent had them, sometimes they're in an entirely unique location on their own. Dawn Ball, good job, Dawn. She says 35 minutes. Yeah, we've got a couple of them sitting here at about that 35 to 38-minute mark. Does anyone see any other transversals? So fibers skittering off across other fibers. Kara says maybe at 9 o'clock. Yeah, we've got one right here. Really good job, Kara. Well done. Carol Lombardi says at 30 minutes, 30 minutes, 30 minutes, 30 minutes, 30 minutes, 30 minutes, a little bit right down here at the very bottom. We've got some and a few other interesting bits in here. Good job, Carol. Excellent. Okay, so you guys have got the eyes to see this, and no pun intended. So good. And so again, with this, because this is a youth, she was 16 when we took these photos, and I've been caring for her parents for years, and I've cared for this young lady since she was born. And so I know the family history. I know how they eat. I know what's going on. I know that at the time we took these photos, there was a lot of turmoil in this family as dad had some serious PTSD from being a civilian who was serving with the military in Central Europe with whatever was going on back then with Croatia. And he came back with severe PTSD that led him into being an alcoholic and led into him being addicted to gambling, which eventually destroyed the family, right? And so knowing those kinds of things and knowing how this young lady and her anger towards her father for what he had done to their family, and that he was not willing to get treatment for it. He was just going to wallow in self-pity and not take care of what he needed to take care of. This young lady was very angry. And you know that anger is an acid emotion. Resentment and bitterness are acid emotions, which when we have a transversal, right? If a transversal suggests a predisposition towards inflammation, and we've got anger, bitterness, and resentment going on, that's going to increase that risk of inflammation. And the first places we are going to be hearing about symptoms of inflammation in this young lady will be exactly where she has her transversals, right? And so we need to be able to fit these pieces together and ask the questions. We need to, we don't just look at an eye and pronounce what we see. We always want to know who our client is. Does that make sense? That this isn't a crystal ball, that we are going to be asking questions and using the eyes and their goals and things like that to guide our processes here. Fantastic, fantastic. I think iridology, if you do it without getting to know your client, becomes a non-holistic. It becomes a very medically oriented procedure. I see what's wrong. I tell you what's wrong. I tell you how to fix it. I don't care what you think. And when we do it with the questioning, with the connecting symptoms to goals, to what we see in the eyes, and getting to know the person, it becomes very holistic, and we can go much deeper when we understand these things. So here's what another one of my recently certified graduates said. This is the lovely Sophia. She is in Ireland. She says, and she posted this on the International Iridology Practitioners Association website, which I truly appreciated. She said, the commitment that Judith has for teaching is extraordinary, and the amount of support you get from the iridology course is fabulous. The material is very clear and thorough. The pace of the course is dynamic, but with enough time to integrate all the parts. As this was my second iridology course, I was not sure if the course would be an add-on, but it has exceeded my expectations. I've learned lots from the course material and classes, expand previous knowledge, and gain more confidence. I can see now how this course has helped me to get better answers from my clients and design an effective protocol in very little time. Highly recommended for beginners and advanced. Really appreciate that. Now, I've been nattering at you for 20 minutes now. So who am I? My name is Judith Cobb. I am a certified level 3 IPA certified level 3 iridologist and a level 3 iridology instructor. There are only 8 level 3 instructors in the world. There's quite a few level 2 instructors, and you can't be just a level 1 instructor because you can't certify as an instructor for level 1. You have to certify at level 2. And then if you want to keep going, you certify at level 3. So these badges make it look like I've only been at it for 2 years. Unfortunately, that's just how the badges are. We have to update with CEUs and ongoing training every 2 years. And so when we've completed those updates, we get new badges with new dates. I've actually been at I've actually been an iridologist, herbalist, nutritional consultant for over 4 decades, and have been teaching for most of that time. I've designed courses, written books, everything. All of them are out of print except the textbook that I use with my dynamic iridology. I'm also a master herbalist and a nutrition professional, a holistic nutrition professional affiliated with these lovely organizations. And so with that, we've got more eyes to look at, so don't leave yet. Don't leave yet, or you're going to miss some good ones. I do want to throw in just a little 30-second commercial for the dynamic iridology assessment system, because we are accepting registrations now for the course that starts on April 11th. This is for holistic health professionals. That means you've at least got a college level anatomy and physiology course under your belt with a grade of at least 80%. Now, I'm really, really sticky about having those credentials, or you need to be a licensed RN, like a currently licensed RN or LMT or RMT or PT or ND or MD or DO. You know, you've got to have those certifications, a certification or the A and P, in order to come into my program, because we go deep. We go deep. We want to not just teach you what a marking looks like, but we need to work with helping you put the pieces together to understand what that marking means, what are the questions you need to ask, what other organs and organ systems could that marking be giving you information about. Just because the marking is in one place in the eye doesn't mean it's not having an impact on another organ or organ system. And you only can learn that when you've got anatomy and physiology under your belt. I love what some people are saying here. These are some of my students, and I just truly appreciate them being with us today of their own free will. They get invited, but I don't necessarily say, I'd like you to come and say something nice. Veronica says, Judith, your knowledge is incredible. Thank you for being so thorough with each explanation. Everything makes sense and is very clear. Chana says, currently in the course, and I'm just screenshotting this because it is so good. Currently in the course and loving it. Judith is a fantastic teacher and loves questions, which I love to ask. Highly recommend her course. So good, so good. And there's a couple more in here. I just need to read these out because, when people are on the recording, they don't get to see the comments. Disclaimer, Chen says, I pay Judith, she doesn't pay me. Yeah, so true. So the purpose of iridology is to help you be able to understand what your client's needs are at a deeper level so that you can more quickly and effectively create protocols for your clients, but not just create protocols. Some people create these massive protocols that nobody can actually stick to. Instead, I teach you how to create step-by-step protocols, how to help you help your clients in baby steps that they can be super successful with. So important. So if you want to learn more than just iridology markers, if you want to learn how to put them together, if you want to learn how to create protocols from them, particularly if you've got something like herbology or nutrition under your belt as well, that those work really well, then we should have a conversation. The dynamic iridology assessment system is 20 classes long. We meet once each week for about 2.25 to 2.5 hours in an interactive web class. And as bonuses, you get recordings of every class session, mini recordings of every topic we talk about, a downloadable textbook, 225 pages full color, downloadable cheat sheets. Think of that like your Coles notes or your Cliff's notes, depending on which generation you were in. A quiz for each module to test and to prove that you're getting this. 2 extra group mentoring sessions. Oh, that shouldn't be each week. That should be each month. Sorry, that was a typo. Each month. Mentoring for certification preparation, certification with IPA. I don't certify you. I don't think it's necessarily ethical for a teacher to certify their own students, right? I think it's better if a student is certified through another organization. And so I mentor you for certification through IPA for up to 10 months after you complete your course. Most of my students can complete certification in 4 to 5 months. And I issue a certificate of attendance. Oh, I should have updated these because you don't get your certification for attending 80% of the classes live. You get your certificate of attendance by getting 100% on all of the quizzes. I should have read these slides better. Haven't used them in a while. Okay, so lots of support, lots of bonus material to help you learn. Some people say that that it's really difficult to assess a brown iris because you don't see all of the fiber structure here. And so there is some truth that you don't see all the fiber structure because there's enough pigment in that anterior border layer sitting on top of the fibers that you don't see the pigment. And that's one of the defining markers of a brown eye is you don't see any pigment. But you still can, with this kind of an iris, see other things that give you a clue as to what the fiber structure might be, right? And so we don't see the individual trabeculae. This is actually a reflection off an eyelash, so that's not a trabecula, a transversal. These are wrinkles in the surface of the eyeball. They are not, again, transversals. And so when we see things like this, it does give us a little more information about the structure, what the fiber structure of this person is. And so there's a ton of information in an eye like this. When we see things like this, when we see these wrinkles, when we see these kinds of lines radiating outwards that are not actual fibers, they're gaps between fibers, when we see what we've got going on in here, and the placement of this ring. There's so much information right here. So let's look at another eye. So this is not a true brown eye. This is what we call a biliary eye. And so really important that that when we're looking at a biliary eye, we recognize that we do see some fiber in these eyes. There will always be a little bit of fiber visible in a biliary iris. And so we've got a lot of heavy pigment in here, but we have some fibers in here. So you might, with the biliary eye, be able to see some transversals. Now in this eye, we probably have a transversal here, maybe, might have a bit of a transversal here. They're a little harder to see. You have to look a little closer. And so where we see the fiber, we can assess, do we see transversals there? And then we can correlate that to whatever we need to for risk of inflammation, risk of blockage, risk of scar tissue, kinds of things. And so we've got another little one over here that could be a transversal if we look really closely. Is it crossing anything? We might want to blow this image up to have a closer look. So a little harder to see these on your biliary eye types. Danielle Mathieu, who is a naturopath in Quebec, love what she says. I completed my first iridology course several years ago. Since that time, I was looking for a teacher who could take me deeper into my knowledge and who would be available to his students and happy to be so, with whom it would be easy to exchange ideas, to feel comfortable asking questions, who would not fear different points of view, and who would be ready to take up the challenge of explaining their own. In short, the rare pearl. During these years, I took several mini classes with several teachers, but I could never decide to take a full course with any of them. There was always that little something missing that made me feel like I was in the right place with the right person. The moment I started talking with Judith, I immediately felt comfortable with her, even though I had no contact with her before. Her welcome, her openness, and her professionalism made me feel that she was the teacher I had been looking for all this time. All the fears I previously felt about other teachers vanished immediately. I felt no hesitation in getting involved with her. I have never regretted my choice, and my expectations were met far beyond what I expected from a teacher. She knows how to transmit to us the taste for excellence, and above all, she knows how to support us and train us to become the truly competent iridologists. Love that. Danielle's first language is French, so this was a translation of what she said, and she proofread it to make sure it was what she meant. So that was lovely. And I really appreciate that, you know, whether you've never taken an iridology course before and you're brand new, but you've got that anatomy and physiology base, or whether you have training, but you're not feeling as comfortable with it as you'd like, you're maybe not using iridology at a level that you feel is the fullest level you could use it at. Those are all good reasons to schedule a time to chat with me about the Dynamic Iridology program. The next online course is starting on April 11th. And again, if you've got that A&P under your belt, or you're a licensed health professional, then and you're interested in learning iridology, then we should have a conversation. The only way to enroll in the course is by speaking with me personally, specifically one-on-one, so that we can get to know each other and make sure that this is the right program for you. I'm used to accept just everybody into the course, and I learned that that was a mistake because it's not the right course for everybody, and I know that. And so really important that we meet. This URL, tinyurl.com/dynamic-iridology is where you go to find a day and a time to speak with me. Now let's look at a 3-generation study. This will be kind of answer one of Chana's questions. So here we have a grandmother. So this is generation 1. And we've got lots of transversals here on the lateral side of this right eye, right? We've got a few more down here on the inferior medial side. We look at generation 2, which is the mom, and we see we've got transversals again, not in exactly the same places, but actually pretty darn close to what the grandmother had, right? Pretty darn close. Interesting. Then we come down to the child, so third generation, and look at how many transversals this child has in almost the exact same places that the grandmother had. We know that the genetics are passed down for 3 to 4 generations. We know that there will be some variation in things. I mean, mom, this is actually a very pigmented biliary eye, or sorry, lymphatic eye, comes down to a slightly less pigmented, as in we not so much extra pigments beyond the blue in this eye. And then we see the father's influence here with the elevated predisposition towards acid levels. So things do get passed down from generation to generation. And this is why we need to understand, is there a personal or family history here? What are the client's immediate goals? What are their current symptoms? And is there a personal or family history? That's all critical information. So hopefully that little example helps a bit. Chana appreciated that. Thanks for letting me know that, Chana. So good, so good. And yeah, so with all of this, again, just an invitation to you that if you are looking for an iridology course, maybe you're looking to go deeper with the training you've already had. Maybe you're new to iridology and you're wondering, is this a good fit for what I do? How will this work in the practice that I have with my clients? Those are good reasons to book a call. The calls are absolutely not high pressure sales pitches. They are not meant to strong arm anybody into doing anything. They're simply meant to be an opportunity for you and me to get to know each other and for us to decide together, is this a good fit for what you need right now? Or is there something else that needs to happen first? Right? Sometimes people come to these calls and they don't have anatomy and physiology. So if you don't have A and P under your belt and you're thinking you want to learn iridology, just reach out to me and I'll shoot you a link to the A and P course that I refer people to. But if you've got the A and P, and Chana says, then we need to talk. Chana says, book a call and bring a cup of tea. Seriously, that's exactly what it is. It's just a relaxed conversation to find out if this is a good fit. If it's a good fit, I will offer you an invitation to get enrolled. If it's not a good fit, again, I will be very honest with you and I will send you in a direction that's a better fit or coach you in a way that will prepare you to be able to enroll in the program at some future time. So with that, my friends, thank you for all of your interaction here today. That was so appreciated. Really, really love seeing all the comments in the chat box. So good to have you with me. And again, I look forward to speaking with you. If you're interested in learning more about, is the dynamic iridology program a good fit, just use that link, tinyurl.com/dynamic-iridology. Let's chat. Let's see what happens. Have a brilliant day. I look forward to speaking with you soon. Bye for now.